Well, hello, friends, and welcome to another Ask Zach. Today is a very special episode, and the reason it's special is because this is a redo. This is a correction of the episode I released about 2 weeks ago on pickups. So I had taken about 3 pages of notes and then consolidated them down. And normally I don't have to do that much, research on an episode, but I did for this. And I ended up getting an important fact wrong, and I looked at, I pulled the video after 2 days. Yeah, so, my apology to the people that saw it. There were about 4,000 people that saw it. My apologies for the inaccuracy on one thing. And, but yes, that's why I pulled it. And so this is a redo of episode 52, How Pickups Affect Tone. And I think we're going to just, we're going to retitle this something like Telecaster Pickups 1950 through 69. And we're just going to keep to bridge pickups. And, yeah. So the point of this episode is to give a history of Telecaster bridge pickups. And then take it down to, to application. And let's say you have a guitar that's bright and you're wanting to darken it, or you have a dark guitar that you're trying to brighten. So then we're going to look at that. We're going to look at actually application, because, even if you're just looking at vintage pickups in kind of the golden era of 50 through 69, there's a lot of different versions of the pickup, and they can, help you kind of push your guitar one way or the other. And also I'll talk about some of the more modern things that are going on. All right. So if you haven't subscribed already, and if you've been enjoying the show, then please go down in the corner and subscribe. If you've already subscribed, I would appreciate you going to askzach.com and going to the store. And there you can pick up a shirt or a mug or a sticker or a hat and support the show. Also, I have tip jar information in the description if you'd prefer that. All right. So Telecaster bridge pickups through the years. Funnily enough, the only Telecaster bridge pickup I had lying around that wasn't actually in a guitar is this La Brea, Brad Paisley, Seymour Duncan collaboration pickup, which I had in the pink Paisley for a while, and then I put the old Peter Florence pickup just out of one. I liked it, but that was what was originally in the guitar, and also Peter Florence was a dear man, and I'm just a little tribute to him. So let's start from the beginning. The earliest Telecaster pickups were flat pole. Now, this one obviously is raised, but flat pole means that all of the poles are even with the top of the pickup and don't stick out at all. And that's what the earliest Telecaster pickups were that way, whether Broadcaster, Esquire. The earliest prototypes used A5 sand cast magnets. Okay? And then when they got into actually producing the Broadcaster had A3 magnets, and then it had 43 gauge enamel coated wire. All right. So then you go from Broadcaster, of course you have the deal with Gretsch, and then you get the Nocaster. And so there are some transition ones, but by the time you get to the Nocaster, the pickup has changed. So now it has continued to be an A3 magnet, but it is now gone to 42 gauge wire, which this might be counterintuitive, but as the numbers go down, as the number gets smaller, the wire actually gets bigger. So you might be asking, so what's the difference between a Broadcaster and the Nocaster Telecaster sound? Well, the only difference is the wire. So one, you have smaller wire on the Broadcaster, but because it's smaller wire, they wrapped more of it, and so you get more output, and it's a little more aggressive, than the what is kind of the standard when you think of a Blackguard sound. Okay, so let's talk a bit about what having a flat pole, how that affects the sound. Well, obviously when you have a flat pole, unlike the one I'm holding, when all the magnets are the same height, well, then the volume is going to be the same. Now that's not taking into account the different size strings or anything. It's just meaning that this is, every pole is sensing the same way. Of course, you do have the fact that you've got different size strings above them. The other thing that happens when you have flat pole is you have more kind of back and forth chatter between strings and poles. So this pole is not just going to pick up the high E string, it's also going to pick up a fair amount of B string also. Okay, so when you have that going all the way across, one, you have the evenness, but two, you have that chatter. And what happens is because there's a less separation, it ends up sounding more compressed and even because there's a little bit, there's more of the other string in every pole. Okay, so that's that sound. So the next thing that happens is in 54, they change from A3 magnets to A5 magnets. This is in 54, 55, this change. Because all these things are somewhat gradual, and Leo has a tendency to use up what was lying around. So, there's transition periods with any change. So, A5 magnet, but the pickup stays the same otherwise, same gauge wire, but by changing to A5 magnets, A5 magnets are stronger than A3, okay? So when you go to a stronger magnet, what happens is, of course, you get some more output, but also you get a push of more of the fundamental of the note, and it's a little more assertive, okay? So the A3 magnet, because it was weaker, again, it's pushing it to a little bit warmer. It's hearing a little bit more of the harmonic stuff because of the fact that there's no, again, it's not as strong of a magnet. So you have this weaker magnet that's then being taken by the coils, and then it's going on to the pickup. Weaker magnets, you get more of the harmonic stuff going on. Stronger magnets, more fundamental. Okay, so that's the next, version of the Telecaster Bridge pickup. Then we get up to the Stagger. One of the things that's really funny about Staggered is, on a Strat pickup, if you were to put a flat pole, pickup in a Strat, you'd think, what's wrong with you? You're going all, modern on me. And, the opposite's true with the Tele. If you put a staggered pole pickup, you think it's, modern or something. So, but anyway, staggered pole. So the first thing, like this La Brea pickup, the first thing that happened was the D and G poles were raised. Okay? So what does that do? Well, it makes these two strings louder than the rest. So it puts an emphasis on these two strings. And of course that was done, because it had been done on the Strat, the idea was to go ahead and do that with the Telecaster also, with the bridge pickup, to get staggered pole, and they were trying to get things more even. And I don't think there was a problem really to begin with the flat pole. All right, so the next thing that happens is the Stagger starts getting above, because on this first version of the Stagger, they just raised the G and the D. But the next version of the Stagger, they raised all of them. So all of them come above the flat work. And also, you get a bevel on these. So this one has no bevel on it, but you get this beveling on the edge of the top of the magnets. And that changes the tone also. As far as we know, we believe the beveling was done to help in production, to help it as you had to force it through the bobbin. But that changes the tone because it changes the kind of the magnetic sensing area, of the pole piece. And so as you bevel it, what happens is that there's less of that chatter going on and more of its pull is focused straight above. So, yeah. So, what's happening is this pickup is going from being more sensitive to harmonics and more compressed sounding to becoming more assertive, more in your face, more separation from string to string. This is what's happening. This is what Leo wanted. That's not what necessarily all the players wanted, but that's what Leo wanted. Leo wanted that sound. So then as you go along, the pickup kind of stays the same for a while, except for going from, they were dipping the the pickup in black wax, which of course would color the twine, which was originally white even on the old pickups. And so that was changed to where it wasn't black anymore. It was, I guess, more of a clear wax that they were dipping in. Then in 63, 64, you get the change over to this, gray kind of, flat work that's on the bottom. Then the next thing that kind of happens is in around 65, 66, you get the dropping of wax potting on this pickup, and they start lacquer potting it only. Now, I have to say this, before they were kind of lacquer potting and wax potting, because what they were doing was they would make the pickup itself, not wind any wire on it, but they would have, the bobbin, the flat work, and the magnets, and they would dip that in lacquer, and then they would and let it dry, and then they would wind it, and then they would wax pot it. So what happened was, in the CBS years, they stopped the wax potting, and what they did was they did the initial lacquer potting, let it dry, wind it, put the twine on there, and then they would just dip it in lacquer again. The problem with that was that the lacquer would flake off. And now you have a situation where you've got lacquer coming off, and you have a pickup that's right under your hand. So this is my 67 Tele. So you're picking here, and you have this pickup that's dipped in lacquer, and this lacquer starts flaking off, which is what lacquer does. Before you know it, you start getting moisture in there, and then you start getting corrosion, and then these pickups start, shorting out, and they die. And so it's actually quite rare to find late 60s pickups that have been used quite a bit, that have been played a lot, that haven't had to be either potted or rewound or fixed in some way. And that's just kind of something that happens with these pickups because they were lacquer potted. The next and final thing that happens is, of course, in 69 or late 68, 69, you get the switch from cloth covered wires to plastic insulated wires. So, and that's kind of the evolution of the bridge pickup, through the years. The neck pickup really didn't change that much. It really, was kind of always, the A5 magnet. All right. So that's kind of the history. Now let's get to application. So you've got a Tele, and you think it's really bright, and you're like, I've got to tame this thing. Well, the first thing I would do before I'd even change pickups is I would change the saddles out. If you don't already have brass, I'd put brass on there. If you already have brass, then I would look at changing out the pickup. So if you have a staggered pole, well, then I'd get a flat pole. And and that's going to be kind of the darkest sound you can get is kind of the 52 Telecaster, kind of thing. The A3, magnet, the 42 gauge wire, kind of your classic blackguard. That's going to be even, compressed. It's going to be, and with brass saddles, that's going to be the darkest kind of Telecaster sound you can go for. Okay. And then, of course, if you want hotter, of course, you can go broadcaster, which is the, same magnets, but with, the smaller wire and more wraps of it. So you get a little bit more aggressive, output and, All right. So let's say you have the inverse issue and you have a dark guitar and you're wanting to brighten it. Well, of course, if I'd look at putting steel saddles on there. First, and then I'd look at, okay, well, how much brighter do you want to go? Well, of course, I'd recommend going to a, staggered pole. If you just want a little bit, just a touch brighter, then you might want to go with the, kind of that first version of the Stagger, where it's just the raised D and G, and still with, you know, A3 magnets, you know, 42 gauge wire. You know, that would be a way to go. Then if you want the step above that, well, go with the, you know, full Stagger, where all the pickups, you know, are above the poles. Then, you know, of course, you know, brighter and more assertive than that is, you know, of course, the beveled and an A5 magnet. So yeah, it just keeps getting more assertive. So that's what I would do. Yeah, so if you're really wanting to brighten up the guitar, I'd get A5 magnet, staggered pole, you know, 42 gauge wire, and there's tons of pickups like that out there. So that's kind of the application on that. I will talk a little bit about Alnico 2. Alnico 2 was not used on old Fender pickups, on vintage Fender pickups at all. It was more, they were used more in Gibson, you know, on Gibson pickups as bar magnets. They are useful, and they are, you know, their output is in between A3 and A5, but they tend to have a pretty smooth sound, which kind of comes across as darker or compressed. And I will say that, you know, back in the 80s, you know, I used to buy Seymour Duncan Alnico 2 Pro Telecaster Bridge pickups, and I would put them in, you know, American Standard, you know, Telecasters and different things, because it was really good at taming bright Telecasters. Another thing, you know, of course, you know, I've talked about enamel wire. Well, you know, enamel was just the coating on the wire to keep it from shorting out. Well, there's also, you know, another insulation that was used, and that's FormVar. FormVar was not used on classic Telecaster pickups. It was used on Strat pickups for a while, vintage. But FormVar has been used by, you know, some modern, you know, winders, even for bridge pickups. And FormVar tends to push the pickup to have a little more presence, and it's a little snappier. So that's another thing you can do, you know, when you're looking at pickups. FormVar is another way of kind of changing, you know, kind of pushing the sound one way or another. But it's not necessarily a vintage Telecaster thing, but I've had pickups that had FormVar wires on it, and, you know, wires, you know, wraps. So, and yeah. Well, I hope that's been a good little, you know, overview of Telecaster pickups, and also just a good way of, you know, yeah, of helping you, you know, find, you know, what's going to be best for you. And if you're wanting to push your guitar, you know, one way or the other, I like all sorts of Tele Bridge pickups. You know, it's like this 67, you know, has, you know, staggered poles with no bevel and A5 magnets, and I love it. And then, of course, I have, you know, like my Nocaster Blackguard that has the, you know, Ron Ellis 52T in it and such, and I love that sound too, with brass saddles. But, you know, a lot of people think, you know, the staggered pole and steel saddles as being pretty bright, and, you know, this guitar, I don't think of it as being overly bright. All right, so let's talk about what I played at the beginning of the show. That was kind of stolen. What I played itself wasn't stolen from John Leventhal, but the tuning was. So when I interviewed John Leventhal, he told me about this tuning that he used a lot. And basically it's standard tuning except for the two low strings. You tune your low E down to C, and you tune your low A down to G. And so that's what I was, you know, using, and then I just, you know, capoed and, you know, was just kind of doing, you know, because you get this. One of the things that's really great about this tuning, and of course I was using kind of a C position kind of thing for that, but if you go to a G position thing like this, what you have is you end up with your tonic note on your fifth string, your fifth note on this fourth string, and your fourth here on the low string. So here I'll show you. So here you know. Also, you can wrap your thumb over the top, but that's a really neat technique. And you can just use a capo and kind of move that around and play out of a G position. All right, that's your lick for the day. Well, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.